Hey everyone, so I'm also going to give you a video this week on Essay 2 and what the expectations are as far as that goes. So I'm just going to share my screen and talk about the essay for a few minutes. So our next essay is on the criminal justice system. This goes along with our textbook our novel that we're reading, Just Mercy. So we're just looking at different themes in the criminal justice system and thinking about those things. So got to be in MLA format. You've got to have the correct spacing, margins, your in-text citations, your works cited page, all those need to match. A minimum of 2 pages. I noticed in the essays that I graded this week, like a lot of people get to what the minimum is and then they're like, woohoo, I'm done. So just remember that's the minimum for like a passing grade. It doesn't, remember an A or a B goes above and beyond. So something to think about. And the page length does not include the works cited. So if you had 2.5 pages of writing in your essay, then page 3 would be the works cited page. This says upload your Word document no later than Sunday, March 19th. I'm going to fix that because that was from last semester, so I have to change that. So the purpose is to talk about criminal justice, to introduce the topic, to think critically about criminal justice, and to help us understand, essay structure and citation. So the novel that we're reading is Just Mercy. It's a true account of Bryan Stevenson's work with people who are incarcerated. He founded the Equal Justice Initiative, the EJI works with people on death row as well as poor and young people. So I really hope you find the book thought-provoking and interesting. So for this essay, you're going to read 1 or 2 articles on criminal justice. If you completed the discussion this week, then you've already read a couple of articles that you might consider using in an essay. You don't have to use those, but it was designed to complement that. So you can choose from, so criminal justice is a really broad topic and covers all kinds of areas. So you want to focus on 1 of 4 areas. You can talk about the jury system, discrimination in the criminal justice administration, juvenile delinquency, or prison reform. Those are the 4 different areas. And you want to write a short essay that addresses 1 of those topics. But again, those are still really broad, so you need to narrow it even more. The articles are designed to get you thinking. You want to choose 1 or 2 quotes from the articles to support your point. But don't just repeat information in the articles. That's one of the pitfalls that many students get into. They read an article and then I'll get an essay that says, the article I read says A, B, and C. And it's like, yeah, that's not the purpose of using an outside source. The outside source is you have your own opinions and thoughts, and you're using the article to support your own point. So it's not just what I call a data dump or regurgitating, repeating information. Again, if you're unsure how to use in-text citations, I have the quiz this week. I have a lot of resources available. Also, the Writing Center can help with that. So, and I can help with that as well. Again, this assignment is not about repeating information that you read in the articles. So, important requirements. This is something I feel like a lot of students just sort of ignored in the last paper. So I just want to go over them again. 1, academic voice. Don't use I, you, we, or other similar pronouns. And I have a link to the guidelines. If you've forgotten what academic voice is, that's avoiding contractions, avoiding slang, things like that. I'm gonna talk about, you want to take out I'm, you want to take out gonna, things like that. 2 short quotes from the articles, no more than 4. You have to use the articles from the CERD's knowledge database under the criminal justice section. So make sure you use the right types of articles, not articles from just something you looked up on the internet. Thesis statements. Here we go. So if you're unfamiliar, you might want to go back and review what we talked about as far as thesis statements. I'd always give a sample. So an appropriate thesis statement for this paper might be discriminatory practices in the American criminal justice system keep the poor from receiving fair due process. Notice I didn't say in this essay, I will discuss. That is not appropriate for the types of papers, the academic papers we're writing. You want to leave out I, or, don't make announcements. I'm going to tell you this. Let's look at that, right? You don't want to directly tell your audience, let's do this. So 2 to 2.5 pages of writing, a separate works cited page, standard essay structure, which is an introduction that grabs the reader's attention, uses one of the techniques in class. It's a thesis at the end of the introduction, a well-developed body paragraph that supports the thesis, and a conclusion. And here's the rubric. So all the essays always have a rubric. I think it's a great idea to look at the rubric, before you write, and then, right before you submit your essay, go through the rubric and check everything off and make sure that you've, met those guidelines. They change as the essays progress. As we get further into things, analysis becomes much more weighted in the essays because, this is critical thinking. So, in the photo essay, some people would say, in the photo, there are people walking down the street holding protest signs. It's like, right, that's what people are doing. What do you have to say about that? So there was no real discussion or analysis about what those things mean. And that becomes more and more important as we go along. MLA formatting. If I commented on your previous paper that your spacing was off, that's something that's an easy fix. So, or if your paper's not formatted correctly. So in the first essay, I usually only take a few points off for that, unless the MLA format is just really not there at all. No attempt at MLA format. But I start to make larger deductions for incorrect MLA format because we've been going over it now. So you should make an attempt to fix it. Little mistakes, like I can tell if you're making the attempt to cite it correctly, but you just kind of missed the mark a little bit, that's not as big of a deal as just a disregard for all of the documentation rules. Sentence mechanics, things like that. There's a difference between language and sentence mechanics. Language refers to academic voice. And if I told you in the first essay and in this essay, don't use I, don't use you, and you continue to do it, the first essay I might take off a couple of points, but again, that might go down to you don't get any points in that area, or like a 10-point deduction. Sentence mechanics, that's grammar. So do you have a lot of comma splices? Are there lots of areas where you didn't even proofread? And by that, I mean, like, some things are just spell checked, very easily caught in spell check. So things like that, you can lose points on in your essays too. So something to remember. The other thing I think I'll show you really quick, let me share a different screen with you, is something that I noticed in your papers. I got a lot of, like, while viewing the picture when you were talking about the essays, and That's really the same thing as saying I. You just took I out. That's not the purpose of not using I. Not using I is to have your papers be universal and take that voice out of it where it's more passive. So I would see things, and all you have to, it would say something like, while viewing the photo, there are people walking down the street. You can just say there are people walking down the street. We already know it's because you're viewing the photo. Same goes for the essay, right? Well, I would see something like, while reading the essay, it states crimes have increased in the past year. So there's problems with that. You want to take out while reading the essay. You don't even want to say the essay states, just say according to, whatever source you're using. You want to make sure you're sounding like you've done your research, according to research conducted by the blah, blah institute, right? And then another thing I saw was things like this. We need our laws to be better. So you want to take out we and are and those types of things out of your papers too. And really what you want to put in here is who you really mean. So you could rewrite this sentence to say, America needs its laws to be better, right? So a lot of times when you say we, you might mean citizens, Americans, you might mean somebody else completely, like students or legislators or criminals, whatever you mean. Think about when you use the word we or are or us. And it's really about paying careful attention to the choices in words that you use. So that's all I really have to say about the essay. If there's something else where you have a question about it, you have 2 weeks to do it. Again, I try to give time so you can go to the Writing Center. So hopefully, get your draft done, go to the Writing Center if you want. And let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I'm happy to help.